to a platform they have provided for the civil society and the citizenry to discuss on topical issues that is as important as the survival of democracy in Nigeria and our own survival as a people. First of all, I must again appreciate the leaders of civil society for keeping the flame of civil space alive and alight in terms of continuously, despite the challenges, staying true to the ideal and the cause for which you have chosen for yourself. Well, first of all, it is important that those of you who are of younger age and have taken the course of civil society in the 21st century to know a little bit of the history of civil society in Nigeria. Well, first of all, I am one of those in the 80s. At that time, we were very, very young, who decided to organize ourselves to pursue the cause of liberating our country from endless years of military rule. And we sat down and conversed within ourselves, what do we need to do? That was as far back as 84, 85, 86. What do we need to do? We said, well, we should organize. And then the idea of building a civil society that is specifically interested and committed and determined to overthrow the military rule, the military regime at that time. And the best way we can go about it is to hinge on a cause which the military were virtually against, which is fundamental rights. Many people thought civil society is about human rights or civil rights, but it's not. But it is the foundation of civil society struggle in Nigeria. So we set up what was called the Civil Liberties Organization, and then later the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, which later all converged into what we call Campaign for Democracy. Great civil society leaders like Bey Koran Kuti and Gani Fawahimi were the foundation and the pillar of civil society in Nigeria. At that time, we were student activists, and they were accomplished men as doctors, as lawyers, as engineers, as people who were professionals. But we know it was not going to be easy for us, because the moment you take a course on human rights, you are virtually coming into an open confrontation with the military at that very time. So during military rule, we were both the civil society and also the opposition, because there was no opposition. And in that process, we paid dearly with our freedom and with our lives. I don't think that what we did at that very time is something I can do now. Because by that time, we don't have wives, we don't have children. So we are ready to go to prison at any time. So many of us found ourselves in jail. When I open the social media space, I've seen our people, younger people, being enthusiastic about military rule, like Traore of Burkina Faso now. Is getting a lot of followership and solidarity from young people across the continent. But it's a fact that you don't know what military rule is all about. You support military rule in Niger, in Burkina Faso, in Mali. You support it, you identify with it, but you also want to express your opinion. You want to be on civil space. You want to elect people into office. You want freedom. So these are two things that cannot be on the same table. So during the military rule, our objective is to pursue the cause of human rights and mobilize and conscientize the citizenry to an open resistance against military rule. In the process, many of us were killed, and many were forced to exile, and some of us spent years in prison. For those who lost their lives, it was tragic and unfortunate. And for those who went to exile, they later came back. The presidential aide said I spent months in prison. It's not months. I was in prison from 1994 to 1998. So I spent almost 4 years in prison. And there is a difference between being in police station and being in prison. Being in prison, there is also two differences. Being there as an awaiting trial and being there as a man who was sentenced. I was not there as an awaiting trial. I was there as a man who was sentenced to life in prison for treason. So maybe when you people watch Nnamdi Kanu in court, some will say jail him, some will say kill him, some will say this. For people like me, we'll just look at you. Because you don't know what treason is all about, and you don't know what prison is. Many of you just pass by and say, this is prison, but you don't know what is inside because you have never been. So my view about a person who has been in detention for a very long time differs from yours. Because you had no experience of being cut off from your family, of being locked inside, of being humiliated by prison warders, of wearing a handcuff and leg chain. You had no experience of all these things here. So your views will certainly differ from mine. So after We fought the military. At a time when the military were pulling out of governance, they invited us that we are done and we are handing over, and you people should go and organize yourself into political party and take over power. For those of you who read history, that was what the ANC did. They transited from a liberation movement to a political party which brought in Mandela as a president. We didn't do that. After Abdulsalam invited us, we were still in our Aluta mode. Even during the meeting, we were shouting, Busa, Busa. But the politicians were gearing themselves out. They invited us, they invited the politicians in 1999. That was when many of us were just coming out of prison. Prepare yourself to take over power. We refused to do that. We can't sit down with oppressors. We cannot talk to oppressors. We want to fight them. We want to destroy. This is our own thought. But the politicians whom you see today have been in office were not ready to fight anybody. They set up themselves into APP, PDP, and Alliance for Democracy. 3 parties. And our leader then was Chief Gani for him. Because to come close to the military and talk to them, we see it even as a taboo. Abdul Salam was saying, come and be there. We refused. The person who happens to be the president today, in that meeting, disagreed with a section of us. If he doesn't get into politics, who is going to run? That some people will take over. We said no. It was being fought. We never realized what we were doing until 3 years after the democracy has settled. Then we started thinking of contesting election. At that time, all positions have been occupied. So that was when Gani contested to be president. He couldn't get more than 50,000 votes. Falana wanted to be governor. Olisa Obakova wanted to be president. Michael Zokome wanted to be governor. But all the spaces were taken over. And for me and others in the north, we wanted to be senators and governors. We couldn't make any headway because the politicians who are not ready to fight the military now have taken over space. And this is what we are in up to today. After the military has gone and these people have settled in governance, it's not easy to transit from civil activism to politics, because activism and politics are 2 different things together. In activism, you are being driven by a cause, an idea, and an ideals you're pursuing. If you are a civil society man in health, you are pursuing issues of health. If it is disability, you are there. If it is education, you are there. But in politics, you will end up, and in activism, you only relate with people you share the same ideas, ideals, and causes. But it's not in politics. In politics, you have to live, sit, eat with even a person you don't like. In activism, when we meet by 8 p.m. and say we are going to do something by 8 a.m., everybody goes to sleep. In politics, after the 8 p.m. meetings, you better leave your phone on, because there will be another meeting by 11, another one by 2, another one by 5. By the time you wake up in the morning, things have changed. In activism, if you are, as an activist, when you are asked about your views on the late President Buhari, as an activist, you will say your mind. Government was bad, full of cabals. Now, an activist expresses his mind. A politician looks at the votes, and he will now sing praises in public. And privately, he will say something different. So we have learned both sides. Now, for those of you who are in the field of civil society, there was a statistic that says 60% of Nigerians were born after 1999. So virtually almost 75 to 80% of people on the social media space have no experience of military rule. So what you don't know, you either fantasize it or you love it because you don't know what it was. Under military rule, as an activist, before we organize protest, we have to meet in the night, print leaflets, reach out to students, youths, groups, see how we can mobilize, organize protests, and do all these things. But now, you have it easier. Most of the protests in Abuja takes place in Unity Fountain. You have this privilege of even taking selfie with the policemen that are around. Sometimes you have iPad to be transmitted live and sipping juice. My own experience, after our arrest, I was taken to a military tribunal, charged for treason. They gave me a defense counsel whom I never knew, and there is a prosecutor whom I've never seen. The prosecutor spoke for 5 minutes, my defense counsel spoke for 5 minutes, and I was sentenced for 2 minutes to life in prison. And they moved me from Kirikiri prison to Port Harcourt prison. We were in Port Harcourt prison when Ken Saruwa was hanged. I could see them from my window. And from Port Harcourt prison, I was moved when I wrote an article that was published in US. I was moved from Port Harcourt prison to Aba prison in Abia State. That is where I finished my service. So, the responsibility of the civil society under a democratic era is more complex than our own. Because during our time, those in the position of authority are occupying the seat illegally, so they have no recognition anywhere. But here, you are dealing with people who are elected, whether it is clean, free, fair, or not. The issue is that the embassies and the world recognize them as elected people in office. So your responsibility as civil society is that You are not the opposition. Your relationship with the government must be measured, and your relationship with the opposition must also be measured. If you said you are not going to deal with the government like the way we do under military rule, it is going to be catastrophic for the whole country. For example, you have to be in the House of Reps and the Senate to know the kind of laws that are being made there. Because even if you are not there, they will pass the law and it will be on you. Civil society groups that are focused on health have to know what is happening in the Ministry of Health. Civil society groups that are focused on education have to know what is happening in the Ministry of Education. Civil society groups that are focused on infrastructure have to know what is there. Civil society groups that are focused on gender violence, child mortality, and all those things, environment, you all have to be there. That is where the area of engagement comes in. The area of confrontation comes in when what you stood for is presently being breached by people in a position of power. There are times you have to protest. Because if you don't protest, they don't understand any language apart from protest. I can give you an example. When we were in the National Assembly, there was a bill on social media regulation. If not for the protest by people outside, it could have been passed. So that is why engagement comes in handy in that aspect of it. Not to take too much of your time, for the young people that are in civil society, I think it's very important that you get a little bit of Nigeria's history. A few days ago, I made a post where I said, those of you that are Gen X, we are the Gen Z. You are the Gen Z, we are the Gen X. You that are Gen Z, what you need to know is that